Hello. Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. Each week we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season we're going to be focusing on horror subgenres and how they've changed over time. Hope you enjoy it, and thanks for listening. All right, we're back, continuing our mini-series on haunted house movies. And so far this season, we've done kind of mini-series on different subgenres, and that's kind of what this season's going to be. We started with zombies, then we moved on to slashers, and now we are in haunted house movies, which I think we both were not excited about until we started looking into it more, and then we got really excited about it. And I would be lying if I didn't say that a large part of my excitement was this finally gives us a chance to watch the Amityville horror.
I think that I had an epiphany while watching the last two horror movies that we did. I know my favorite genre of horror movies.
Slasher?
No, dude.
It just reminded you how much you hate this.
Yeah, it's just like, fuck these. No. Yeah, dude, haunted house. Like, this is, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, this is just what I'm here for. This is what I love.
I have really enjoyed them too. And it's just weird to me because I've always kind of had in the back of my head that like, oh yeah, haunted house, what could be more corny and lightweight? And then we started looking into haunted house movies over time. It's just like, well, that one looks good and that one looks good.
Right.
And the movie last week was awesome. And then, yeah, I'm in real time changing my attitude, which is a thing that I feel like isn't allowed to happen in media. So
yeah, congratulations,
listeners. You're witnessing a miracle.
Right. And I think it's also like it's I don't want to say it's easy, but like this can embody like what you want to feel like when you're maybe going through like a haunted house or something. I feel like haunted house horror movies can kind of help you with that. You could see stuff in the background, the feeling you get when watching, and it was just, yeah, I was just stoked, and like kind of scared while watching them. I'll admit it.
Yeah, and one thing we talked about in the very first episode was how haunted house movies many times rely on very subtle things to do what they're trying to do, and so they can age a lot better than some movies in other genres that are much more reliant on like special effects that do look dated over time. So I think that an example of that is like, obviously House on Haunted Hill was not like super high budget and did not have really compelling visual effects, or, you know, they weren't doing anything super technical, but they still managed to make a very compelling movie that I think holds up.
Yeah, and I think that's something that like we've kind of seen as well, like with a couple, like, you know, Blair Witch, and you think of like Paranormal Activity too, like where you don't necessarily have to spend a ton of money to get the vibe right. And, you know, I think, you know, Paranormal Activity specifically, but Blair Witch as well, talk about haunted house or haunted, scary vibe, you know, just intense vibe during the film. That's the movies for me, at least. The ones definitely. That like when you're walking down the hallway because you're shutting down for the night and you're going to bed and you're walking down the hallway and it's a little dark. The one that you kind of like, the reason why you kind of scurry a little bit, you kind of hurry up a little bit to get to your room, at least I do, is for two reasons: haunted house horror movies and Terrifier.
Yeah, right.
I'm just being an open book today.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
That's a nice way to tie together the last miniseries with this one. So well done there. But yeah, as we talk about haunted house movies, there are a few things that we're going to pay attention to for each of these. One is like, why are the people stuck in the house? Another is, what is the source of danger? Then how are the people being affected? And finally, what techniques is the director using to create fear? And how is that interesting or unique compared to other movies? So we're not really trying to tell a story as much as how the haunted house genre was initially conceived, and then a pivotal movie came out that gave it more of a shape moving forward, and then that got stagnated, and then a new movie came and innovated. We're just going to focus on how people over time have attacked this subgenre with different techniques and how well they did doing it. And so, going back to even the very first horror movie, arguably, was the short that we watched in the first haunted house episode of this season, that was really just a series of moving pictures from France in like the 1890s all the way until now, where we have some of the movies you just mentioned that are more current. Haunted house horror has kind of always been part of the horror genre, and that's really what we're looking at, is kind of how it's been done different ways over time.
Yeah. We missed a couple that I wanted to do on this. That's neither here nor there. I'm sorry.
We'll come back to them. We got many more seasons to go.
We got time.
So, yeah. So anyway, for today, we watched the Amityville Horror from 1979. Somehow neither of us had seen this movie before, and that seems just wrong, and I'm glad that we have righted it.
Yeah, I think that for me, I think I worked at the theater when the 2005 version came out, and I just it went on so much that I was just like, I don't have the energy to watch the original. Because I'd have to start the movies and all that. So yeah, surprising though.
Yeah. Also, it was crazy to me that they were able to get Lois Lane for this movie. But she was also in Black Christmas, so maybe she wasn't as big at the time. Like, maybe she got way more popular later, but yeah.
That was Lois Lane.
He's absolutely right, it was.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah. So anyway, a lot to go over here. I will do a quick introduction, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the bleed from the walls details.
I was going to say James Brolin eyebrow details.
In 1979, American International Pictures brought us The Amityville Horror, a paranormal haunted house film based on a book by the same name. The Amityville Horror tells the story of a young couple who buy a house with a dark past. After moving in, things get creepier and creepier as they discover who really owns the house. This movie was made on a budget of $4.7 million and brought in over $86 million at the box office, which makes it one of the highest grossing independent films of all time. It was previously available for streaming on Tubi, but it had some warning about it going away in a few days, so you'll probably have to rent it on Amazon Prime Video if you want to watch it now.
I don't blame that on Tubi.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Tubi is nothing but
Tubi's so great.
Yeah. But what have you learned about this movie?
So it's funny that you mentioned how much they made, because James Brolin and his eyebrows, I guess he couldn't get like any contracts for new films after this for a few years. I guess because of like the intensity of his acting or something like that. However, he got 10%, or I think it was 10% of the gross that the film made.
Oh, that's a hell of a contract.
He made I think it was like $17 million or something like that. So like what, it's in like the newspapers and stuff, like he can't get any films. He's laughing all the way to the bank. He don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy, huh?
It would be a waste. He would make less money doing movies than just sitting on the interest from that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So there's like 1,000 Amityville Horror, like part 1, part 2. Did you know that?
Yeah. If you search any movie website like IMDb or something for Amityville, you'll just have pages of results to scroll through.
It's insane. I didn't even realize. So this one was kind of based off of like the George Lutz. That was the family that moved in after the killings that happened at the house, which is what the book's about. Mm-hmm. And that guy, actually, the guy who did the killing in like at the original house, he passed away in 2021. That long ago. It's crazy. He was a kid. He literally killed them. Like, I guess they were laying the same way in the bed. There's actually a documentary out on it about the Amityville Horror killings. I don't know what, I think it was called Amityville Horror, but it's a documentary. I didn't watch it. I don't know if it's good or not, but apparently they kind of dive into it there. But the other thing that kind of came with this was there was a lot of like lack of paranormal activity that actually happened while filming. But one of the things they kind of did from what I was reading was they decided to make up some of the stuff that happened on set, like someone getting hurt by a light or whatever the case is. And it kind of happened so much that then people started questioning George Lutz's story of what this is kind of based on.
Oh, yeah.
And like that just kind of snowballed, and like, you know, Ed and Lorraine, they visited the house and said, yeah, there's like something demonic here, you know, all that. And then like a skeptic, Ed and Lorraine, I don't remember this guy's name, he was like, I'm gonna do it, but you realize this is gonna be televised, like people are gonna see that if it's not real, people are gonna see that it's not real. And like a couple, like shortly before they were supposed to do that, with the skeptic coming in, they canceled, basically like, no, don't come and verify this anymore, that the house is actually haunted. Mm-hmm. Kind of like making their story a little muddy a little bit. But anyway, apparently George is saying that people woke up at 3:15 a.m. every morning. That was when Ron carried out the murders. Supposedly we're smelling strange odors, green slime oozing out the walls and keyholes and cold spots, certain areas of the house. You know, like that's, I don't know. It's up in the air what really happened, but you know, they definitely tried their best by 1,000 remakes of the Amityville Horror to at least tell their story. But the 2005 version definitely tells the book side, or the books, you know, the story with Ron and them. Supposedly, I didn't watch it. I haven't watched it all. Those are my facts.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the stuff you will read about this has to do with how accurate or inaccurate it was to the book, and then how accurate or inaccurate the book was to life. Because I think there has long been speculation about it, and it's one of those things where anytime a movie becomes this popular, then people are going to use that as kind of the reference point to like judge a thing. And so it's almost like, because I think kind of what you were saying is like the movie was so popular that became everyone's perception of what the book was. And then everyone was trying to judge the reality off of the movie and not off of the book, which was the source material for the movie. And it just gets difficult to try and find out the truth in any of that. But I thought it was really interesting that they were able to kind of take and combine all those elements of that story and then turn it into a movie that I think sort of transcends anything that could be considered real life, right? Like this was a really impactful horror movie that told the story of a haunted house in, as far as I can tell, a pretty unique way at the time, and did it on a low budget and with a lot of creativity, and ended up with a thing that has had a huge impact. You know, even if you look at just other movies of the same name or that are references to Amityville in some way or another. But also I think a lot of the things they did in this movie had a lasting impact and have been copied a bunch. Because we talked about last time how in House on Haunted Hill, there were kind of like some tropes of haunted house movies that we saw that we've seen a million times since then. There were some in this one too, I think.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, you know, even like the 10th day, like it would pop up on the screen, like this is the 10th day. Even that, like, I think it works. But yeah, that's something we've seen so many times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I should say, did things that became tropes of haunted house movies, but weren't at the time. And so there were things, you know, from the House on Haunted Hill, like the door closes and is temporarily locked, or the long outside shots of the house, where it's like, yeah, this movie did some of that too. But also it did lots of other kind of creative new things. And that's something that I think has stood out to me a lot in movies in the haunted house genre, is that a lot of times they will almost kind of pick a few of those techniques or tactics that you would expect from a haunted house movie and then use them again in an effective way because they're just like psychologically effective. But then they'll introduce their new things as well that then may catch on, for movies in the future. So it's just kind of this like long tradition of influences, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely like everyone borrowing from everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you talked about the murders in the house, and so in the very opening scene, which is a thing that is common in a lot of horror movies, where you have like the super brutal intro, and then that kind of sets the tone for making you wary or creepy about things that happen afterwards. And this one started with a murder in a house that was in the past. And then, you've got the house is blocked off with the crime scene and cops and paramedics and all that. And that is the thing that kind of ties it back to the book, or the inspiration, or the real life event that supposedly had taken place, that was the thing that caused all of the hauntings, or was caused by the hauntings, or something, like some kind of relationship there. But then I really liked the way that after that, when the newlyweds show up at the house with the realtor for the tour, you start seeing the flashbacks of the murders happening like in the rooms that they're looking at. And they went hard, like on the brutality of that. And that was one thing that I had in my notes that stood out to me a lot about this movie, was specifically like brutality towards children. Because you don't see that a lot of times in horror movies, like direct violence. But in this one, like you saw him like shoot kids. And then later there was the thing with like the window falling down and like crushing the kid's hand and stuff. And it's just like something about that is way worse than seeing it happen to an adult.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt. I think the flashbacks for me, like initially it made sense. It seemed like it just randomly stopped happening, which was a tad kind of confusing for me. But yeah, like the brutality of like the killings was terrible. Yeah. Just awful. Yeah. Like it was just like, I mean, anytime you see something like that, I think most people are like, oh, that's awful.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost as bad as like a dog. I'm just kidding.
I mean, almost. But yeah. But yeah, so like I mentioned, this one of the things that was, really big in House on Haunted Hill was the long outside shots of the house at night. I feel like that was almost like comically overused in this one, but it really did do a good job of kind of like setting the tone. And it was also a good like transition piece, because there was a lot of, here's the thing that's happening during the day. Now it's nighttime inside the house. And so by cutting to that shot of the house outside at night, that was one way of like quickly transitioning and letting you know what was happening. And so I guess it worked, because like you said, a lot of it was set up for the clock hitting 3:15 a.m. But kind of going back to like our things that we're paying attention to, one of them is like, why are the people stuck in the house? Like, why don't they just go somewhere else? And one thing I noticed early on in this one was that the couple is talking about how they can't really afford the house. And then throughout the movie, they talk about like lacking money and something about like the IRS. And the whole thing is just kind of really to remind you that they're in a financial situation where they couldn't afford to easily move somewhere else. And as far as like rating how well directors have answered that question, I put this pretty low, just because I feel like anybody could find a place to go if they were really worried that they were living in a haunted house. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand exactly. I thought of this question while watching, and multiple times in my head was like, you guys could just go. And I was trying to figure out why they can. And the only thing I could think of was like, if it was, if George was like kind of possessed or whatever, if that was like, even though they didn't really talk about, let's just until like the end, basically, like, let's make a run for it. Which is like the first thing I think I would say in any situation like that, like, let's just go.
Yeah.
But I was kind of thinking that, and the other thing that to touch on that finance wise, like was when he's talking with his business partner, his employer, whoever that guy was, I don't know his name, like they were struggling, like they were on the verge of like not making it kind of thing, and they really need his help and all this, and so I think it was definitely financial there were definitely periods where it was like something, like they would find the portal to hell or whatever, and then it's like next thing you know, it's like 2 days later.
Yeah,
you're like, or like a day later, and you're like, wait, what happened?
Right.
So
would have been nice to have some follow up. Also, why are you just leaving that open in your basement? Yeah, right.
So I think that almost like hurt it as far as like why can't they leave? Because it's like that's 100% the reason why you should just go.
Yeah,
just
although
go.
What you said about with George the dad being like kind of losing it or almost being like kind of hypnotized by the house or made sick by it. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe that was kind of the way that was. Yes, it is. They don't have a lot of extra money to spend for going somewhere else, but also he's not in the right headspace, and that's why they didn't just leave when it was obvious they should have.
Yeah, because it seemed like the headspace was just like there 1 second and then gone the next. Yeah.
Well, and I think that plays into kind of a bigger trope that we'll see in haunted house movies is that it seems like the houses affect different people in different amounts. So like there tend to be very like specific targets. So in this one in general, like the wife, Lois Lane, didn't really seem to be super affected by the house on like a mental level. But with George, it was obviously really screwing with his head. And then with the priest that came, it like made him physically sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then you get into everything with like the daughter and her being able to see the specific ghost that had the name Jody or whatever. And it was interesting to me that like other characters were able to live there and mostly be unaffected unless something like physical was happening. It wasn't like it was invading their body the way it was able to with some people.
Yeah. Yeah, and even the nun too, like she stopped and threw up, and that could have just been from the being so scared or something. But
that's why you don't eat room temperature shrimp cocktail, my friend.
Boy, that's something that should go in the Bible. Yeah, for sure. I think that was like I think the frustration I had was like that: should they leave or shouldn't they leave? But it wasn't that bad for me. But
yeah. Another thing I liked, and you already brought it up, but the idea of the close-up shot of the clock as it turns to a certain time when bad things always happen. I feel like that's a thing I've seen a lot in haunted house movies, but this is the first time I remember it. And then tying that back to, kind of the story and like that's when the murders happened, I thought was kind of a good add as far as like tying the whole story together.
Yeah, what was the deal with the priest not wanting to be involved?
Yeah, I don't really know. Ugh. I don't really know how priests work,
Yeah, I don't really either. One of those dudes was smoking a cigarette. I wasn't getting narc on him to the main one, but I was like, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah. Body of Christ, body is a temple, all that. But yeah. It was also, the priest would also get real dramatic. I feel like there was a lot of priest yelling in this movie.
So much yelling.
Yeah.
Between those guys. It was like, what the heck is going on? It seemed like they changed accents during the middle of it too.
Yeah, right. And then even when the one priest was like praying really loudly in the church later on, and then eventually he went blind, I was like, maybe his blood pressure just spiked,
That's a very logical reason for it, actually.
I was like, you just need to calm down.
I think that's great. Yeah.
Too much stress and red meat, my brother.
Yeah.
But,
lay off the sodium.
Exactly.
Father.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it was kind of interesting too, I guess, like the psychological aspect. So the way that George was just getting weirder and weirder and like losing track of time and money and responsibilities. It was almost like it almost felt like he was on track to being possessed or something, which was kind of interesting because the daughter was more like being influenced by a ghost that was like talking to her that only she could see. So I feel like those are two very different types of like haunting demon movies, but they were happening together there in the same house.
Yeah. I definitely thought he was possessed the whole time. So if he wasn't, then that's interesting. Yeah, for sure. And the fact that it also like continued on leaving the house, George, the character George was acting crazy in the bar as well. Like it followed him there. Mm-hmm. That could have also been another reason why they didn't leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my one of my favorite scenes in this was when the mom had the nightmare that George had killed the daughter with the axe and then kills her too.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just a really good fake out because it started like at nighttime with the clock hitting 3:15 and him getting up out of bed like it was already happening. Like that was just normal.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't really have any like tip off that it was a dream and not real. And you thought the movie just got way more intense for a minute. And then like shortly after, George is just like out in the yard sharpening the axe. Like everything about that whole sequence I thought was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, that whole dream, the only thing that really threw me off was the mom's like face when she was fixing to get like caught. I don't know if you noticed, but like it definitely looked like her face looked weird in that scene, but I don't think it was like on purpose. And now I feel like I'm insulting Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And I feel bad about it. But if you, I highly recommend you guys go back and check it out because it was a weird. I'll take a picture and text you, Daniel, so you don't have to.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. So anyway, I guess over the course of the movie, stuff in the house gets weirder and weirder. There's more haunting type things. They kind of get more piecemeal information about like the history of the house and stuff. But we talk a lot about how a lot of times with a horror movie, things kind of build and build and build, and then eventually towards the end of the movie you hit that like top of the roller coaster, and then it's just like all a crazy downhill terrifying ride from there. And that kind of happened in this one where the storm is blowing in, and instead of saying like day 18 Wednesday or whatever, it just says the last night. And so you're in for something. And then the whole sequence from that point towards the end I thought was really intense and fast-paced and hard to explain, but also influential, just because George trying to axe through the door, I'm pretty sure was directly ripped off by The Shining. No. And then those branches flying in through the window, I'm pretty sure was ripped off exactly by Poltergeist.
I don't know about that. I'm just kidding. I thought the same thing, dude. I didn't take the Poltergeist. I didn't catch that one, but the axe was like, oh yeah. But here's the thing, though. Shining came out in 1980.
Yeah.
And this one came out in 79.
Mm-hmm.
So ooh. Yeah.
I did a little bit of digging on like movies that were influenced by the Amityville horror, and I think that because it did so well at the time, a lot of other ones like really tried to cash in on even movies that were good, right? Yeah. Like I'm not arguing that those movies were good or that they didn't pull those scenes off. It was kind of funny to go back and watch this one and be like, oh, they did it first. Cool.
That's dope.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about how the people were being affected. I think we talked about kind of the techniques that the director was using to create fear. Like it's impacting different people in different ways that are unpredictable. There is physical danger, like when, things fall on people or when things disappear, or it can make you sick, or it can like mess with your brain. It can shut you in a room and you can't get out. And it's a mix of like physical and I guess I would say like spiritual attacks. But then I think the question that I still had at the end of this going back is, what is the source of the danger? And I still cannot explain to you the storyline of exactly what was going on in this house.
Yeah, zero idea, if I'm being honest with you.
I feel like they kept kind of alluding to things, but it never really made full sense to me what was happening.
I'm not even positive that they knew exactly what was happening.
Like the writers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it like, I thought it held together pretty well, like up until like they found like the portal to hell.
Yeah.
Or wherever. And then like from then on was just like, that was when that was just when I felt like it went downhill. Like,
yeah,
things weren't necessarily making a ton of sense. Shout out to him for running back into that house to get the dog.
That was my favorite part of the movie. Yeah.
That's a real hero. Like, that's something that would come out nowadays because it's like, I feel like it's like a known thing with dogs in horror movies. We've been pointing it out from day one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did that. But yeah, it was very confusing. But
Yeah.
from the sound of it, it sounded like the real life story was equally as confusing. So
yeah,
mission accomplished,
and
I guess.
to be fair, like in the moment, I wasn't really thinking about that. It was more like after the fact when I was trying to go back and like answer these questions in my notes, and I was just like, oh yeah, I don't know. I think there was a witch that had a house there one time, and for some reason, now the walls bleed.
Yeah,
But yeah,
they did say something like the house was built on a something. Oh, that's where they sacrificed something, right? Isn't that what it was?
I think so.
Yeah. But see, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, exactly.
I could tell you how many big eyebrows Brolin had, though. 2.
Yeah. Well, and I liked the end where there was just like the text, like they did nothing to resolve the story in the movie. They just had the text that was like George and Kathleen Lutz and their family never reclaimed their house or their personal belongings. Today they live in another state.
Yeah.
And it was just like, all right, cool. No resolution, no wrapping it up, no happy ending. Like they just got the hell out and stayed out. And it's like,
yeah, made their money and ran.
Good on them.
Yeah. In real life, the actual Lutz family, they bought that house for $80,000, which was like cheap during the day. And I guess for like extra, like it was like in the hundreds of dollars. I want to say like $400 or $500. They got all the furniture in the house. And that was basically still there from when the original murder happened.
Oh wow!
That house, yeah. So that was the furniture from the original that was there when that killing happened, which is just crazy to think about.
Yeah.
So in real life, I think that ending actually was a little bit more, or I guess that's how they got there. But oh well.
Yeah.
All in all, though, man, like I gotta say, like I had no beef. I didn't have like any major problems with this movie, and I'll definitely watch it again because I bought it.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't catch the Tubi in time.
Yeah.
But I had some credits. So I got the movie for $2.
Nice.
Yeah, I was
That's
like,
the way to do it.
It was like a free rental, or I could just buy it. And I was like, I'll just buy it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and this one, like overall, I think was good. I think if you're a fan of the haunted house genre, this is one totally worth checking out. Super influential. You've seen things that sort of started here in a ton of other horror movies since then. Mm-hmm. And if you really wanted to dig into like the Amityville world of movies, again, just search on IMDb for Amityville and, keep scrolling and you're going to have an infinite number of movies to go watch next.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So yeah, this was fun. Glad we checked it out. And next week go ahead.
James Brolin's eyebrows, too damn big. I couldn't stop focusing on him, man. I'm sorry. There you go.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
I was just going to say it was a great find. Now I feel like I have to say something prolific.
Profound?
What's prolific?
Just means like doing it a lot.
I'm going to do something prolifically profound.
Now we're talking.